Have you ever felt that thrill of pursuing a new goal only to be held back by that fear? As parents and spouses and even individuals, we often face this. And today we're going to talk about how we can acknowledge that fear without letting it control us and how to stay true to ourselves in the process. Stay tuned. Hey parents, welcome to Fulfillment Therapy. Do you want to raise your kids better and have a stronger marriage? Are you up late at night researching marriage and parenting tools and self-care tips? Do you start each day hoping for deeper connections and less chaos, but it ends with family arguments and going 12 different directions again? My name's Kendra, wife, mom, therapist, and growth enthusiast. It wasn't until I discovered how to fulfill my unmet needs that I was finally able to show up as my best self as a spouse and parent. I realized that by meeting my needs, I could more fully meet the needs of my family with more energy and less resentment. In this podcast, I teach parents skills like boundary setting, prioritizing personal needs, communication, and claiming ownership. Just like my clients, you'll be shocked by the improvement in your marriage, parenting, and personal life when you focus on fulfilling your important unmet needs. Ready to prioritize yourself so you can quit mentally throat punching people? Then grab those earbuds and head outside, and let's walk and talk. Welcome back, my friends, to Fulfillment Therapy, where we explore ways to enhance your mental health and wellness and life fulfillment, both for you and your family. I'm your host, Kendra Nielsen, and today we're going to talk about the excitement and fear that come with living intentionally and pursuing our goals. Not too long ago, I had a podcast guest on, Jody Moore. She's a big-time coach, and she has almost 20 million downloads on her podcast. In the process of doing that, I was researching quite a bit and making notes, and I thought I'd do a podcast episode on some of those notes today because I love learning from thought leaders like John Maxwell, Tony Robbins, Brene Brown, and many others. And I want to talk about what I learned from this research today. Jody said, "Don't let fear ride shotgun." And I want to talk about what this means for us personally and as spouses and parents. Just imagine being on the edge of a cliff and feeling that rush of excitement mixed with that fear as you think about taking a leap toward your dreams. And I'm not talking about jumping off the cliff and hurting yourself, but that excitement, or maybe the top of a roller coaster or something, right before you do something really exciting. I had a client recently that has been talking to me for a while about starting a new business while she's a full-time parent, and that has been very scary for her, and yet something she feels called to do, but there's a lot of shame and complicated feelings mixed in with that. She feels both thrilled and terrified at the possibility of this. But I want to hold on to this story for a minute and come back to what happened later. Let's first talk about imagining the future. It really does start with those positive visualizations, and there's a lot of science to back this up. We used to think this was woo science or just weird kind of things like the law of attraction, but we've been able to see the results of visualization even in a lab. What we found is that what we think about and what we focus on is what we create in our lives. It's plain and simple true. And if you think about it, you've recognized the same in your own life. So when we use our imagination to envision a more fulfilling future, we can start moving toward it. For example, if you want to be more present with your family, imagine yourself having meaningful conversations and enjoying that quality time together. Jody said that fear often tries to control us, but we can use our thinking brains to overcome that. It starts with understanding our fear and strengths. My friends, fear is natural. It is not a death sentence. Remember that. Normalize it. I talk about this all the time. When you are setting big goals or even small goals, you're making those significant changes. And fear is often there every step of the way. But that fear does not have to dictate our actions. We can acknowledge that fear without letting it drive us. Another thing that Jody said that I just love is that our weaknesses are often our strength overused. I've heard the same concept many different ways, but I like how she made it very succinct. And this can look a lot of different ways. I want to give you an example here. Sometimes being overly responsible can lead to burnout. Or in my case, I am very good at being motivated, determined, driven, focused. And when I latch onto something, I don't let go. And sometimes that can be my weakness because sometimes I need to let go. For the sake of my higher values, it's best to let go. And I need to reevaluate and make sure that balance is there because I know that strength overused can become a weakness and affect both me and my loved ones. So, what is it like for you? What is that thing? Now, let's talk about external validation. This is something that trips a lot of people up when they are trying to become who they were meant to become, but they are too focused on that validation or people pleasing or worrying about what other people think. It's so easy to get caught up in that. Jody talked a little bit about this as well, and I don't remember how she said it, but it was something like, what John thinks of Joel says more about Joel than John. So when we focus on our own path rather than seeking that external validation, that can free us from that unnecessary stress. Jody said, "You don't have to like me. That's my job. I'm not for everyone." I have a colleague and friend, she was actually on the show as well, Denise Winkle, and she would wear a shirt as a therapist that would say, "I'm not for everyone." And I loved that. We do not have to be liked by everyone. That reminds me of another personal story. I may have shared this before, I can't remember, but I had a friend come and tell me that somebody was gossiping about me and sharing that they didn't agree with some of my parenting. And I think especially because I have a podcast about marriage and family, I think there are sometimes more judgments for me, or maybe I'm just perceiving it to be that way. But that felt especially hurtful because I really try as a parent. And I am very human, as my children will tell you. And that impacted me more than I thought it would. I just generally don't worry much about what other people think. But it started to get me thinking, like, what are other people thinking? Are people judging me for my parenting? Do they think that I'm not being hard enough on my kids or holding them more accountable? Like, I just started to spiral a little bit, not a lot, but I started to go into that space, which we all do. So again, keep your own experience in mind and think about how you spiraled, how you let that set you back maybe a minute. Now I want to talk about my logical brain that pushed back a little bit. So this individual that was gossiping about me is a very different person. She's a little more authoritarian. She dictates more for her kids and makes more decisions for them than I make for my own children. I'm a little more on the authoritative side. And to be honest, there might be times when I am more passive. So we are very different. I give my kids a lot of choices. I get their buy-in. We have conversations. And to be honest, I don't know what it looks like in her family behind closed doors. I just know what it appears like. But I haven't walked in her shoes. I don't know what her situation is. There might very well be a reason she shows up like that with her kids. Like maybe their personalities require more of a heavy hand or that more controlled approach. I can't speak to that. All I can do is focus on what is best for me and for my family and let go of the rest. Now, if she would walk in my shoes, I am very confident that she would understand and have more compassion, and the same goes for me and her. I can let go of what she thinks of me and recognize that I'm not for everyone, and she may never understand in this life the reason I do what I do, and that's okay. And she could say the exact same thing for me. But that ties in with my next step, being true to yourself. Being true to ourselves means living authentically with who we are without comparing ourselves to others. I don't have to compare myself to her or these seemingly perfect little families that I see in church or the community, and not worrying about being less than or more than others, but instead accepting people where they're at and loving them on their journey. I was actually thinking a little bit about this the other day. My son has a cold, and every time he does, I just go crazy because he uses his hand all the time to wipe his nose and a lot of other gross things. No matter how much I try to train him to use a tissue and to blow his nose, he is so resistant to it. And the more that I push, the more it's a power struggle, and it's just not going well. And every time he has a cold and we're in public, I just think, oh, what people must think of me. That I don't encourage this, or like I start to go down that road too much. Instead of just being my authentic self and letting go of the fact that I can't always control this little human, even though I might want to, and just be the best person that I can be in that moment, again, without worrying what everyone else is thinking. And no matter how disgusting it is, just doing my best to teach him along the way. Just focus on what works best for you and your family. Now, you might encounter people that don't like you, that misunderstand you, and you might be hurt by it. And maybe even some of the things they're saying might be true. They might be seeing your thorns and not your roses. And that does hurt. And we can just accept that. And it can also inform us of maybe those rough edges that need to be rubbed off a little bit and be grateful for that. I was recently listening to a business book about this, that people that give them all that negative feedback is actually very helpful because it's free auditing where they tell you all the areas that are terrible. And then you're like, great, thank you so much for that. Now I know what areas I can go fix because of all that negative feedback you gave me. So again, you can shift that mindset and see it as something that will help you become your best self without getting too bogged down by what you're not, or by everybody liking you, or trying to be for everyone instead of being authentic. And the last step I want to talk about is taking action. So showing up intentionally. This is a big part of the process. Set those goals, whether big or small, and remember that when we show up, that can be scary. Most of the time, it will be scary, especially if it's something that we've avoided for a long time. But it's also incredibly empowering. Again, it's about normalizing that fear and just noticing, hey, you don't get to be a driver, but you can definitely hang out in the car. That's no problem. You don't get center stage here. You're just this person that shows up sometimes, and I can validate you and normalize your experience, but you're definitely not my keynote speaker. Sorry, I think I've had 70 analogies in just this one episode, so hopefully you're following along here. Jody also said that fear wants us to hurry up. When we allow it to rush us instead of slowing down and getting intentional about how we're going to show up and not allow fear to be the driver, then that is that beautiful space where we become our higher selves and become who we're meant to become, because we're not letting fear dictate our actions. It can simply be information, but generally fear is not helping us go the direction that we want. Sometimes it can be a massive motivator and a tool to help us get there. Like, for example, sometimes I think of fear being this big, ferocious dog that's going to come attack us. But you can shift that mindset and instead put a leash on that dog and point it in the other direction. And you can hold on, and that fear can pull you forward in the process. Because often when we are too comfortable and we're just happy and there's smooth sailing, we don't really feel this great desire to change anything up in our lives. And that's why we don't want to get rid of fear completely. Like, it's okay to have fear in the car instead of some sort of mutiny where we kick fear out of the car, but instead say, yeah, hang out with us because you're a great tool to help propel us towards that growth and that change, that if things were too comfortable, we likely wouldn't take that next step towards becoming who we're meant to become. Now I want to go back to that story of my client. She did eventually take that leap and start her own business and found that new sense of fulfillment and joy and purpose. And she worked through those feelings of shame and fear and what other people were going to think of her if she did this. Like maybe she'd be a bad mom or she wouldn't be able to be present for her family. Well, most of her fears were unfounded. And when she did have a setback, because there were some along the way, she simply course corrected. She really didn't become that terrible parent that she thought she'd become. She had greater success and she was able to stay present with her family and available and set those healthy boundaries. Again, with that accountability. And the same goes for you too. So some of the key takeaways from today are to use your imagination positively and focus on creating a fulfilling future by imagining it. What does it look like for you? How can you use your imagination to take your life to the next level? The next one is to manage your fears and your strengths. Acknowledge that fear without letting it control you, and balance your strengths to avoid those weaknesses. We all have them, and that's okay. It's about course correcting It's about apologizing and normalizing that situation. We're all here to learn. The next one is focus on your path. So don't let that external validation dictate your actions. Focus on being authentic and true to yourself and not hyperfixating on being a people pleaser or worrying too much about what other people think of you. Have that mantra in your mind. I'm not for everyone, and that's okay. And last but not least, take intentional action. Show up as you want to, even when it feels scary, and trust your rational brain to guide you in that process. As Ralph Waldo Emerson said, to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. Let go of what other people think. Dig deep and go inward and get intentional. What feels like the next right step? And trust that. Best of luck to you as you lean into that fear, as you normalize it, and you live with greater intentionality and authenticity, both embracing the thrill and the fear that come along with it. It truly can be an amazing roller coaster ride. That's all I have for today. Don't forget to check out our blog on fulfillmenttherapy.org/blog. And also, if you would like to be an intern with Fulfillment Therapy, you can email us at hello@fulfillmenttherapy.org and learn the ins and outs of a mental health and wellness business, especially if you are considering creating a passive income yourself. We have a lot of amazing perks, so you can email us and find out what those things are if you'd like to be a part of our team. As always, we have new episodes every Monday and Thursday, so I will see you back here in just a few days. Until then. Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, chances are someone else would too. Would you take 30 seconds to share this with a friend who's looking for greater family fulfillment? And while you're sharing, tell me what you think about the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It refuels me when I hear this podcast is helping you. No matter what your house or your hair looks like, I'll meet you back here every Monday and Thursday morning for more episodes. Until then.